Question 1. A company, Aqualogic Inc., is conducting a water footprint assessment for its food processing plant. During the scoping phase, the audit team is debating whether to include the upstream water used to produce the raw materials and the downstream water used for product disposal. Some team members argue only on-site processes should be considered. As the lead auditor, you are expected to provide direction. What should Aqualogic Inc. consider when set system boundaries? A. Only the direct water usage of the plant during operational hours should be considered for clarity and manageability. B. All direct and indirect water usage, including upstream and downstream processes, must be considered when relevant to the goal and scope of the study. C. Only upstream water use should be included, as downstream usage is not the manufacturer's responsibility. D. System boundaries should be flexible and changed post-assessment to align with stakeholder expectations. Answer. Correct answer. B. Explanation. According to ISO 14046 and consistent auditing practices, system boundaries must reflect the goal and scope of the assessment and should include both direct and indirect water usage when significant. ISO 14046, Section 6, 2, 3, and ISO 27002's risk-based thinking encourage a full lifecycle view to identify potential risks and impacts accurately. Excluding upstream-downstream water flows may result in material omissions, which compromise the audit's completeness and relevance. Option A ignores indirect water. Option C limits system scope without justification. And D misrepresents the purpose of predefined boundaries. Question 2. An audit of BlueNature Limited reveals inconsistencies in water consumption data collected from several factory units. One auditor insists that primary data be used exclusively, while another argues that secondary data is sufficient when verified. The lead auditor is called to decide what is the most appropriate course of action regarding data quality in this scenario. A. Accept both primary and secondary data, provided their quality is assessed and relevance is justified. B. Discard all secondary data to preserve the integrity of the assessment. C. Use only primary data collected in real time during the audit period. D. Allow only secondary data if collected by third-party certified organizations. Answer. Correct answer. Explanation. ISO 14046, Section 6. 3.5 stress the importance of data quality assessment, not the exclusive use of data type. Data, whether primary or secondary, must be evaluated for completeness, consistency, representativeness, and transparency. Primary data is preferable, but secondary data is acceptable when well documented and verified. Discarding data solely based on origin, as in B and C, is not practical. Option D falsely elevates third-party data over project-specific context. Question 3. During a regional assessment, ISTA-RAFIC, a senior auditor notes that two facilities with similar water withdrawals have significantly different impact scores. He suspects this is due to regional water stress variations. In what ways can characterization factors influence water footprint results between two similar facilities? A. They normalize impact scores globally, negating the effect of regional stress differences. B. They account for local conditions such as water scarcity, making location-specific impacts more accurately represented. C. They exclude water quality and focus only on volume consumed. D. They primarily influence acidification and eutrophication categories, not water scarcity. Answer. Correct answer. B. Explanation. Characterization factors ISO 14046, 2014, Course 7, 2. Convert water inventory data into potential environmental impacts by considering regional water stress and scarcity, which differ between geographic locations. This explains why two similar withdrawals yield different impact scores. Option A contradicts location-based impact assessment, while C. Overlooks quality metrics relevance. Option D. Misplaces the function of characterization. Those factors are not used for acidification directly, but for scarcity-weighted consumption. Question 4. Green Metric Limited has completed a water footprint assessment and intends to publish its findings in a corporate responsibility report. The board asks the lead auditor how to communicate the results to stakeholders including regulators, investors, and the public, which strategy is most appropriate when communicating water footprint results to multiple stakeholder groups. A. Use highly technical terminology to ensure scientific accuracy for all audiences. B. Present simplified results while suppressing data variability to avoid confusion. C. Tailor content to the audience's level of expertise while maintaining transparency and consistency. D. Publish only aggregated results to avoid potential misinterpretation of detailed data. Answer. Correct answer. C. Explanation. ISO 14046 Clause 9 emphasize effective communication that aligns with the target audience's needs while retaining transparency, consistency, and reproducibility. This means auditors must strike balance between detail and accessibility. Technical audiences, e.g., regulators, may require deeper data, while public communications should be concise but truthful. Option A is exclusionary. B and D reduce transparency, contradicting the standards principle of reproducibility. Question 5. Sunhydro Corp reports a high level of water withdrawal in its operations, but nearly all of it is returned to the environment. Some stakeholders express concern over their water usage figures. How should Sunhydro Corp distinguish water withdrawal from water consumption in its reporting? A. Water withdrawal refers to water that is reused, whereas consumption includes water returned after treatment. B. Water consumption includes only polluted water, while withdrawal includes all extracted water. C. Water withdrawal is the total amount taken from a source of consumption is the portion that is not returned to the same watershed. D. There is no distinction. Both terms can be used interchangeably. Answer. Correct answer. C. Explanation. Per ISO 14046, Clause 6, 3, 4, water withdrawal is the total volume extracted, while water consumption refers to the portion not returned to the same watershed in quality and location. The distinction is critical for impact evaluation and aligns with ISO 27002 principles of accurate environmental risk reporting. Option A misdefines reuse, B focuses incorrectly on pollution, and D contradicts international standards terminology. Question 6. Mr. Valentin leads a team auditing a multinational beverage company. During verification, he notes that water use in packaging was omitted from the report due to lack of data. Management insists this omission is negligible and should not delay reporting. What is the auditor's obligation during the completeness check in such a case? And accept the omission since it relates to a minor component of the product lifecycle. B. Document the gap but finalize the report as planned to avoid delays. C. Require justification of the omission, evaluate its potential impact, and disclose it clearly in the report. D. Recommend removing the packaging stage entirely from the system boundary. Answer. Correct answer. C. Explanation. ISO 14046 Clause 9. 3. 1. Advocate for completeness checks to ensure all significant water flows are included. If the stage like packaging is potentially impactful, its omission must be justified, evaluated, and disclosed transparently. Ignoring it, as inapt, compromises the assessment's credibility and alignment with standard auditing practices. Transparency is key, even when data. Question 7. Opticim is reviewing a water footprint study that uses data from various regions with different collection methods. He observes large confidence intervals in impact assessments and wonders if results can still be considered valid. How should uncertainty be addressed in water footprint interpretation? A. Large uncertainty renders the entire assessment invalid. B. Results with uncertainty should be hidden to prevent confusion. C. Uncertainty must be quantified and reported transparently, influencing the confidence level in decisions. D. Only average values should be presented and uncertainties omitted for clarity. Answer. Correct answer. C. Explanation. ISO 14046, Clause 9.4.2 emphasize uncertainty analysis as integral to interpretation, especially when making decisions. Quantifying and transparently presenting uncertainty improves stakeholder trust and reflects auditing due diligence. Hiding or ignoring uncertainty, as in BD, violates the standards principles of transparency and reproducibility. Uncertainty does not invalidate, but guides risk-informed decision-making. Question 8. A study of a textile factory shows increased use of chemical dyes. Mr. Habib, the lead auditor, is asked whether these substances impact water footprint beyond just volume. What should Mr. Habib explain regarding water footprint and human toxicity? A. Human toxicity is not part of water footprint assessments under ISO 27002. B. Water footprint only considers volume of water used, not pollution. C. The release of harmful chemicals can contribute to human toxicity potential, which is a recognized impact category. D. Only ecological toxicity is relevant. Human health effects are outside the scope. Answer. Correct answer. C. Explanation. Human toxicity potential is a recognized impact category in ISO 14046 Annex B, relevant to water footprint studies when pollutants are involved. ISO 27002 includes health-related risks under environmental and stakeholder impact assessments. Option C reflects this principle. Options A mischaracterize the standard's comprehensive environmental impact scope. Question 9. What is the primary goal of conducting a critical review in the context of a water footprint assessment? A. To verify numerical accuracy of water usage data only. B. To ensure completeness, transparency, and alignment with ISO standards throughout the assessment. C. To provide legal validation for stakeholder claims. D. To improve efficiency by removing unnecessary stages. Answer. Correct answer. B. Explanation. As outlined in ISO 14046 Clause 9.5 and aligned lead auditor guidelines, the critical review process ensures that assessments are transparent, scientifically and technically valid, and compliant with relevant standards. It's not limited to data accuracy. A. Legal enforcement. C. Or efficiency improvements. D. A proper review builds credibility and trust in the reported findings. Question 10. Greenflow Limited published its water footprint analysis but did not disclose assumptions made or limitations of its secondary data. A stakeholder challenges the credibility of the study. Which aspect of ISO 27002 and ISO 14046 does this situation most directly violate? A. Reporting format requirements. B. Transparency and reproducibility principles. C. Internal review procedures. D. Water stress methodology selection. Answer. Correct answer. B. Explanation. Transparency and reproducibility are core principles in both ISO 14046, Clause 9.6 and ISO 27002. Failure to disclose assumptions and limitations undermines stakeholder confidence and prevents replication of the study. These omissions violate ethical and technical standards of auditing. Option A refers to structure, C is process specific, and D is unrelated to the issue. Question 11. Greenstream Beverages is undergoing a water footprint audit for its bottling facility. Mr. Daniel, the lead auditor, notices that the reported water inputs do not match the outputs and the total water balance reveals a discrepancy of over 15%. The facility manager claims the water loss is due to evaporation during bottling and cleaning processes but provides no quantitative backing. To determine whether the facility's data is reliable, what should Mr. Daniel do? A. Accept the evaporation explanation as reasonable without further validation. B. Apply industry benchmarks to estimate evaporation loss and proceed. C. Require mass and energy balance to quantify unaccounted losses and ensure internal consistency. D. Exclude the evaporation from the assessment to maintain balance. Answer. Correct answer. C. Explanation. According to ISO 14046, 2014 Clause 6.3.6, ensuring mass and energy balance is essential for internal consistency of water footprint data. The ISO 27002 auditor should require the facility to provide calculations or measurements that validate claimed losses, e.g. evaporation. This ensures transparency, reproducibility, and data quality. Claims without evidence. A. Using generic benchmarks without context. B. Or excluding unquantified components. D. Contradicts audit rigor. Question 12. During an audit of Aquatex Limited, ISNOR discovers that the company used national water usage averages for local processes where primary data was unavailable. The company claims that these figures are close enough and should be accepted. How should ISNOR evaluate the use of secondary data in this case? A. Accept national averages without further checks since they are officially published. B. Reject the study entirely due to the use of secondary data. C. Assess the representativeness, consistency, and uncertainty of the secondary data and disclose its implications. D. Replace secondary data with auditor assumptions for consistency. Answer. Correct answer. See explanation. ISO 14046, Clause 6.3.5 stress that data quality assessment is crucial. Secondary data can be used when primary data is unavailable, but it must be evaluated for representativeness, consistency, and uncertainty. Accepting it without review. A. Rejecting all secondary data. B. Or using assumptions. D. Is contrary to the standards integrity and evidence-based approach. Question 13. Two companies producing different types of biodegradable packaging request water footprint assessments. The auditor needs to compare the environmental performance of these products fairly. What is the most appropriate way to define the functional unit in this comparison? A. Define the functional unit based on mass of material produced per year. B. Use the weight of each package for comparison regardless of purpose. C. Define the functional unit based on the performance or function delivered. E.g. protection of 1 kilogram of product. D. Compare each company's total annual water usage. Answer. Correct answer. See explanation. According to ISO 14046, Clause 6.2.2, the functional unit should be based on the function performed by the product, allowing fair and meaningful comparison. Comparing water usage based on weight. A. B. Or annual totals. D. Ignores useful function and may misrepresent environmental performance. The purpose of the functional unit is to provide a common baseline for comparison of differing products. Question 14. During a water footprint study for a dairy processing plant, Mr. Shahid finds that large amounts of phosphate-rich wastewater are discharged into a nearby river. The company claims this has no bearing on the water footprint. What should Mr. Shahid conclude regarding eutrophication potential? A. Eutrophication is a minor concern and can be excluded unless it affects human health. B. Nutrient discharges into water bodies must be assessed for their contribution to eutrophication potential. C. Eutrophication impacts are only relevant for marine environments, not freshwater. D. This is outside the scope of water footprint and should be treated separately. Answer. Correct answer. B. Explanation. Eutrophication potential is a recognized impact category in ISO 14046 Annex B and ISO 27002 supports evaluating pollution-based risks. Discharge of nutrients like phosphates into water bodies leads to oxygen depletion and ecosystem damage, which must be assessed. Options A, C, and D incorrectly restrict or ignore the significant impact pathway. Question 15. Econova Limited conducted a water footprint study using average annual data across its global facilities. Mr. Ossen, the auditor, is concerned about the lack of local differentiation in water availability. Why is geographical and temporal scope critical in water footprint assessments? A. It is irrelevant if the water usage is low overall. B. Water impact depends solely on the product, not location. C. Water scarcity and stress vary by region and time, affecting environmental relevance. D. Using global averages ensures fairness in comparison. Answer. Correct answer. C. Explanation. ISO 14046, Clause 6.2.4 highlights that location and time significantly influence water impacts, especially in areas under water stress. Averaging global data. D. Dilutes meaningful interpretation, while A and B ignore the context-specific nature of water-related risks. ISO 27002 supports risk-based auditing, which depends on local conditions. Question 16. During an audit of a paper manufacturing unit, Rachel notes that water input includes rainwater harvesting, but the output excludes evaporation and leakage. The plant claims this simplification is adequate. What should Rachel recommend regarding input output identification? A. Only purchased water needs to be included in input accounting. B. Output flows like evaporation or leakage can be omitted if minor. C. All relevant water flows, including rainwater, evaporation, and leaks, should be identified and documented. D. Input-output balance can be ignored in internal assessments. Answer. Correct answer. C. Explanation. ISO 14046, Clause 6, 3, 4 mandates identifying all significant water inputs and outputs to ensure transparency and completeness. Omitting components like evaporation or leakage distorts results. ISO 27002 auditors must ensure that all flows are identified even from non-conventional sources like rainwater. Simplification. A. B. D. Compromises the audit integrity. Question 17. Mr. Karim, a lead auditor, is reviewing a multinational company's water footprint report that uses different water stress indicators for each facility. He is asked whether this approach enhances or hinders comparability. How effective is using diverse water stress indicators across regions? It enhances scientific validity by customizing per facility. B. It limits comparability. Inconsistent indicators are needed for cross-site evaluation. C. It is mandatory under ISO to vary indicators by country. D. It allows for more subjective interpretation. Which auditors prefer? Answer. Correct answer. B. Explanation. While customization adds contextual accuracy, ISO 14046, Clause 7, 2 recommends using consistent stress indicators across facilities to ensure comparability. ISO 27002 expects assessments to support risk-based comparisons, which inconsistent indicators hinder. Option A is partially true but lacks consistency. C and D are incorrect. Question 18. Opta1 is appointed as an external reviewer for a water footprint report. She is asked by the company to approve the report without critique to expedite publication. What is Opta1's ethical and professional obligation under ISO guidance? A. Review impartially and highlight any methodological or transparency concerns. B. Approve the report as requested if payment is confirmed. C. Delegate the review to the internal audit team. D. Make only stylistic suggestions, avoiding technical critique. Answer. Correct answer. Explanation. ISO 14046, Clause 952 defines the role of reviewers as independent evaluators tasked with ensuring credibility, impartiality, and technical accuracy. ISO 27002 further supports auditor objectivity and ethical standards. Approving reports for convenience. B. Delegating responsibility. C. Or avoiding critical review. D. Violates auditor principles and the standards intent. Question 19. After finalizing its water footprint study, Ecoflow Inc. publishes a report claiming full compliance with ISO 14046 despite omitting uncertainty analysis and critical review. What principle is violated in Ecoflow's claim? A. Confidentiality of internal data. B. Transparency and adherence to all methodological requirements. C. Economic competitiveness regulations. D. Reviewer independence clause. Answer. Correct answer. B. Explanation. ISO 14046 requires that all methodological steps, including uncertainty analysis and critical review, be completed for a valid claim of conformity. Omitting such components and still claiming compliance breaches the transparency and credibility expectations of both ISO 14046 and ISO 27002. Options A, C, D are unrelated to the issue. Question 20. In a water footprint study, various assumptions were made about crop yield and irrigation practices. Mr. Iqbal, the auditor, is asked how these assumptions affect the final results. Why is sensitivity analysis critical in this context? A. It confirms that all assumptions were correct. B. It reveals how different assumptions can affect water footprint outcomes. C. It eliminates the need for further uncertainty analysis. D. It substitutes for primary data collection. Answer. Correct answer. B. Explanation. Sensitivity analysis ISO 14046 Clause 9.4.1 is used to determine how changes in key assumptions affect results, helping identify critical data and support better decisions. It does not confirm accuracy. A. Eliminate uncertainty needs. C. Or replace data collection. D. ISO 27002 emphasizes robust scenario testing to validate conclusions. Question 21. Icachain Limited is undergoing a water footprint assessment for a new product line. The board suggests conducting only an internal review due to time constraints, but the marketing team insists on making public environmental claims based on the results. Which approach should the lead auditor recommend regarding the type of review? A. Proceed with internal review only as long as it meets documentation standards. B. Conduct an external review if public claims or comparative assertions are to be made. C. Defer the review entirely until the next audit cycle. D. Use peer review by internal staff to simulate external verification. Answer. Correct answer. B. Explanation. According to ISO 14046, 2014 Cause 951, an external critical review is mandatory if the water footprint results are used for public disclosure or comparative assertions. ISO 27002 emphasizes transparency and stakeholder trust. An internal review may suffice for internal use, but not for public claims. Peer review by staff. D. Lacks independence. Question 22. A university research team conducting a pilot water footprint study of local farms struggles to quantify irrigation water due to inconsistent records. One researcher suggests estimating the amount based on crop yield. What is the best course of action for inventory calculation in this scenario? A. Use average yield-based estimates as a replacement for missing data. B. Disregard irrigation water since it cannot be directly measured. C. Use conservative estimation methods and document assumptions clearly. D. Rely solely on farmer interviews for data inputs. Answer. Correct answer. C. Explanation. Per ISO 14046, Cause 634, when measured data is unavailable, conservative estimates may be used but must be clearly documented and justified. ISO 27002 supports this under its risk and assumptions transparency principles, using averages without clarity. A. Or unverified interviews. D. Compromises data quality, while B. Omits a key input. Question 23. Optoralina is auditing a plastic manufacturing firm and finds that the report includes only water used during on-site operations, excluding water used in energy generation and raw material extraction. What guidance should Optoralina provide regarding indirect water use? A. Indirect water use must be included if it contributes significantly to the total water footprint. B. Only direct water use is required to be reported under ISO 14046. C. Indirect water use is optional and typically excluded from ISO-compliant assessments. D. Including indirect water inflates the assessment and should be avoided. Answer. Correct answer. Explanation. According to ISO 14046, Clause 633, indirect water use, such as in upstream energy or raw material production, must be included if relevant to the goal and scope. ISO 27002 advocates for completeness and materiality, ensuring hidden water risks are captured. Options B, D overlook this critical element. Question 24. While reviewing the water footprint report of BioHarvest Company, ISTA-LIM observes that some water data for outsourced processes are from outdated datasets with no uncertainty scores provided. What should ISTA-LIM do as lead auditor? A. Recommend proceeding since the datasets are publicly available. B. Accept the data if its source is reputable. C. Flag the data and require a quality assessment including uncertainty analysis. D. Exclude those outsourced processes from the scope. Answer. Correct answer. C. Explanation. ISO 14046, Clause 635 requires all data to be assessed for accuracy, completeness, consistency, and representativeness, including uncertainty analysis. ISO 27002 reinforces the importance of data reliability to support risk-based decisions. Reputable sources, B, are not enough without quality analysis and exclusion. D, would misrepresent system impacts. Question 25. Ocean Pyrometer discharges treated wastewater into a saline estuary. During the audit, it's unclear if this discharge qualifies as returning water to the source. How should the discharge be treated in water footprint assessment? A. Count it as water returned since the volume is unchanged. B. Consider it water consumed if not returned to the same watershed in quality and location. C. Ignore it as long as it complies with environmental permits. D. classify it as grey water and exclude it from calculations? Answer. Correct answer. B. Explanation. ISO 14046, Clause 6, 3, 4 specifies that water is considered consumed if it is not returned to the same watershed or is degraded in quality. ISO 27002 emphasizes environmental consequences and stakeholder impact, so location and quality matter. Legal compliance. C. Doesn't ensure sustainability. In grey water, D. is not exclusionary. Question 26. During an audit presentation, Aquasphere Limited showcases a water footprint assessment but declines to share assumptions and data sources, citing confidentiality. What core principle is being challenged by this decision? A. Accuracy of water use estimates. B. Timeliness of reporting. C. Transparency and reproducibility of the assessment. D. Financial confidentiality requirements. Answer. Correct answer. C. Explanation. ISO 14046, Clause 9.6, require transparency and reproducibility. Critical to trust, peer validation, and decision-making. Assumptions and sources must be documented and accessible. Refusing to share them compromises the credibility of the audit. Option D is unrelated unless trade secrets are redacted appropriately. Question 27. During a comparative assessment between textile suppliers, the audit team considers using normalization and weighting to simplify interpretation for stakeholders. One team member warns this could introduce bias. How should the audit team proceed? A. Apply normalization and weighting as required by ISO 14046. B. Avoid using normalization as it is prohibited in comparative studies. C. Use normalization and weighting cautiously, disclose the methods transparently, and explain their limitations. D. Rely solely on raw data to preserve objectivity. Answer. Correct answer. C. Explanation. ISO 14046 Annex D allows normalization and weighting but warns that their use should be clearly justified, transparent, and not used for public comparative assertions without a critical review. ISO 27002 supports this under risk communication principles. Raw data alone, D, may hinder stakeholder understanding. Question 20. Marine Corps Limited's report assumes constant water usage year-round, though operations are known to vary seasonally. The report makes no mention of this. What must the lead auditor ensure regarding this omission? A. Accept the simplification if operations average out annually. B. Require assumptions and limitations to be explicitly stated and justified. C. Ignore it unless it affects stakeholder perception. D. Request redoing the entire assessment based on real-time data. Answer. Correct answer. B. Explanation. ISO 14046, Clause 6, 2, 5 emphasize that assumptions and limitations must be documented transparently to avoid misleading results. Seasonality is a known influencing factor, and its omission without disclosure is a compliance issue. Reassessment, D, may be too extreme unless the impact is material. Question 29. During an external review, Alice notes that the methodology deviated from ISO 1404622, a proprietary approach. The company insists the method is industry best practice. What is the appropriate role of the critical review here? A. Validate the company's claims if the results appear sound. B. Accept any deviation as long as it's internally approved. C. Evaluate the deviation's impact on transparency, comparability, and standard conformity. D. Focus solely on data accuracy, not methodology. Answer. Correct answer. C. Explanation. ISO 14046, Clause 9.5.2 states that critical review ensures methodological compliance, transparency, and credibility. Deviations from standard methods must be justified and their implications assessed. The reviewer must evaluate both process and impact, not just outcome quality. Internal approval, B, or soundness without transparency, A, is insufficient. Question 30. River Harvest Inc. operates in a region prone to seasonal droughts. Its audit report shows consistent water availability figures throughout the year using an annual average index. What should the auditor recommend in light of these findings? A. Replace all data with peak drought condition metrics. B. Use region-specific temporal water stress indicators to reflect seasonal variability. C. Accept annual averages as industry norm. D. Dismiss the findings since long-term operations are unaffected. Answer. Correct answer. B. Explanation. Per ISO 14046, Clause 7.2.2, water stress indicators must reflect spatial and temporal variability, especially in regions with high seasonal variation. ISO 27002's risk-oriented approach supports capturing dynamic conditions. Using only annual averages, C can mask significant impacts, while A may skew results.